Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hitting that play button for another episode of the Heady Coleman Podcast, where I sit down with fabulous people to have go-win conversations. Go-win is being consistent and doing the right things that allow for you to achieve the wins that you defined for your life or organization or business so that you can live out your greatest story. And so there's three things that I love to see happen out of these conversations. I love to see you learn from them. Love to see you be inspired by them. And I love to see community happen. You connecting with my guests around whatever it may be. I don't know what it may be. It may be that y'all both like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But however we can connect y'all into the same community would be awesome. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, I have one of the most consistent people in a sense of just hitting me up periodically with an encouraging text message to make me smile. I love to see him on social media with his family. There's always a great pic when it comes to him and his family out doing things. He's a shaker and mover. I love his heart for community and the different things that I've been able to see him connected to over the last few years of me knowing him. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up right now. Get your hands together. Give it up. You see him, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching on YouTube, you see him. Let's get a close up. Let me find his. There he is right there, ladies and gentlemen. Jefferson Killgore. Jefferson, what's up, man?
Man, it's Friday. I'm wearing Red Sox because I want to be like you when I grow up. I'm happy to be in Guthrie, America. I enjoyed the drive to Guthrie, America.
Nice.
Just blessed to spend time with good people and good intentions. So
now, you said you didn't come down I-35. For those of you who, Guthrie is just north of Oklahoma City, home of the Thunder. Most people, when they come to Guthrie, it's about a 25-minute, 30-minute drive. Depending on where you're coming from, come down I-35, but not Jefferson.
No, sir.
You took the back roads.
I took the back roads, and I enjoyed it, and it was convenient, and I'm glad I did. It was not intentional to take the back roads, but logistically speaking, I made a right-hand turn north on Highway 74 and went north for about 20 minutes, and then I made a right-hand turn on 33, and it was two-lane roads and big tractor trailers and trucks, and it was nice to just not feel like you were on another I-35 interstate. It felt like you were intentional with your drive. It felt like you were coming to a community, which I got to drive in through the heart of Guthrie and see the red brick roads and see the historical just essence of being part of Oklahoma. So that accidental drive was good for the soul, and I'll take the long way home.
Yeah, for sure. Do that because I'm telling you, it's something peaceful about coming the back way too. Like just seeing the open fields, getting stuck behind a tractor. Did you get stuck or diesels or big trucks coming down?
A couple of big trucks. And then one guy, he wanted to pass me. And he wanted to. He was going to pass me. So I just moved my little Subaru out of the way and let him motor on up the road. But I think it kind of plugs into, you and I were chopping it up yesterday on a phone call. And I avoided using the word busy. Mm-hmm. And I think when you take the interstate, you find yourself being busy because you're in a hurry to get there because that's the quickest way that I can get to the next thing.
Yeah.
And, certainly not an intentional anecdote, but by taking Highway 74, it didn't feel so busy. It felt like you were enjoying the drive.
Yeah. And for me, that's one of the reasons I live in Guthrie, America is because I like it slow. And if I want busy, the cool thing is Oklahoma City, not busy. If you want activity, you want to see people honking and you want some traffic in your life and all that, I just go down to Oklahoma City and get it. But I enjoy both, but I really love small town living, and there's nothing like it. So I'm grateful that you're getting to experience it today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Why don't we do this? Tell me, I love to ask this question if whenever I get a chance to sit down with somebody. First, let's start this. How do we know each other? What was our original connection?
Well, I think the word that you and I both love because it's so part of who we are is community. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I heard about Heady before I met Heady was I walked into our buddy Vernon D's shop. He used to have one that was down, I think, off like Penn and maybe, 18th or something like that. And I was just walking in to, hang out, spend some time with him, maybe buy a couple of cool shirts. And he was on the phone, and you could tell that he was in like a really meaningful conversation. And when he goes to hang up the phone, he said, "All right, bro, love you, go win." And I'm like, who hangs up the phone by saying go win? And then he kind of uncovered the story of your all's relationship and mentorship. And then fast forward probably 6 months later, I walked into North Church off Memorial in Oklahoma City, and you were greeting people as you do, not just holding doors open, but holding hearts open with a big warm smile. And I was like, this is the guy that was on the phone with my buddy 6 months ago. And that was an event that our mutual friend, Jeff Cadel, had invited me to. So
Okay.
I don't even remember what was discussed, but it was over lunch, and it was the day I finally got to meet you.
That's super cool.
And then our relationships have continued to kind of overlap through just a lot of different social circles and intentional hearts.
Yeah. No, that's good. Tell me, how do people describe Jefferson who knew you as a kid?
Oh man, as a kid, just outgoing, always busy, always active, probably not known by my grades, but they were pretty darn good. Loved playing sports. And I think I say love playing sports because I'm now in that season where I'm watching my kids play sports. So, had a really close knit group of friends through elementary school and middle school, moved from the heart of Oklahoma City out to Deer Creek before Deer Creek was a large school. When I was there initially in the 8th grade, you still had a stop sign every other mile. The only thing that was in the school district of Deer Creek that wasn't the school itself was a general store that was so old it still had a dirt floor in the back corner.
Yeah.
And wood planks everywhere else. But now it went from when I was there 20 plus years ago as a 2A school to, a thriving 6A school that doesn't look like it's going to get any smaller anytime soon. So
that's crazy.
I think that circle of friends that I surrounded myself with carried a lot of similar traits as far as outgoing, energetic, active, probably a little whimsical, probably a little bit of mischief, sprinkled over a whole lot of ornery, but those friendships were meaningful, and most of them still hold true till today. So.
Yeah, that's super cool. Tell me, so what kind of personality do you think that they would say? Like, were you mischievous? Were you outgoing, funny?
All of the above.
Oh.
All of the above. Yeah, but at the heart of it, whether I was in the classroom or the wrestling mat or the baseball field, there was still like a work ethic that was.
You were a grinder.
It was at the heart of it. But it was fun. Wrestling practice was hard, but it was fun. School was relatively easy, but I made it fun. And I don't think I did that intentionally. I didn't wake up and write the word, fun on my dry erase board and say, it's going to be a fun one. But I think that my parents introduced that element. You should always enjoy what you're doing. So whether that's drawing cartoons all over the, homework assignment I shouldn't have drawn on, it's still fun. Yeah.
Tell me about the middle school Jefferson. Was there anything that stood out to you in middle school?
So when I went to Oklahoma City Public Schools, it was K through 4, and then it was supposed to be a 5th, 6th grade center. But then it was in one of those seasons where they kept changing things. So I think I went to Hoover Middle School when it was a 5th, 6th grade center. Mm-hmm. I think I went there when it was a 6th, 7th, 8th grade center. And then as an 8th grader, that's when my parents had moved from, the heart of Oklahoma City out to Deer Creek. My dad always wanted a little bit of land and a horse. He got the land, and 25 years later, we still don't have a horse. But that transition of being in a middle school that had over 750 students, 72 or 73% of which were quote unquote minority students. It was home. It's all I'd ever known, being in a community that big, and then getting plucked out of that and dropped in Deer Creek, where I was one of, 90 students in my 8th grade class, felt very different. You had a lot of kids that had gone to Deer Creek K through 12. And there weren't a whole lot of new faces. But as an 8th grader, I was a new face. My brother and sister are twins. They're 2 years younger than I. My brother and I were pretty decent little wrestlers. And we were quickly identified as oh, yeah, the Killgore brothers. They're really good wrestlers.
Gotcha. What was the age difference between you and your brother?
We're 2 years and 2 months apart.
Okay.
They were born on Statehood Day.
Okay.
November 16th. So, yeah, they're and my brother and my sister to this day are two of my very best friends.
That's cool.
Outside of my marriage.
Yeah.
So we also really value that.
Yeah.
But to get identified, and we didn't know that we were being identified as, oh yeah, the Killgore brothers, they're really good wrestlers.
Yeah.
It was kind of like our second last name. But it was what allowed us to like move into a new, smaller community with much more ease because we were identified by, I hate to say we were identified by our value, but they knew that's what was going to be part of our place in a smaller school district.
Got you. So middle school, you were a wrestler. That's when you kind of moved out to Deer Creek.
Yep.
Went from big school to small school. Still got this work ethic, kind of become known as the wrestlers, kind of people. Going to high school, what was high school like for you? What was did you have a big learning lesson in high school that kind of changed the way you think or started doing things?
I love that you say big learning lesson, and I'm going to take it 2 grades back.
Okay.
Maybe as part of that difficult personality that was a little ornery at times, I was in the 6th grade, and I had a teacher who will not be named today, but she and I did not get along, and we did not see eye to eye. But my dad said, hey, you've got to know who the boss is, what the boss wants, and how to give it to him. And that lesson of those 3 rules of who the boss is, what the boss wants, and how to give it to him completely has carried through to my day as an adult. Mm-hmm. That was a really big learning lesson, and it was a difficult learning lesson because I thought that I should be able to act a fool in this teacher's class and still make the good grades with no disciplinary consequences. But then you move to Deer Creek and you have an 8th grade teacher that also may not see your charisma as being a value add in the classroom, but you look at that same 8th grade teacher and you're like, okay, I know the rules. I know who the boss is and I know what she wants, and I'm going to provide her with the answer that she wants.
Yeah.
So going into high school, I hate to say it was easy, but it wasn't difficult. I, like every other, 8th grader in 1995, can tell you exactly where I was when the Murrah bombing happened, and that made an impact. I remember that, we had a baseball game that afternoon, and I remember that the Oklahoma Blood Institute was taking donations at the high school that day, coincidentally, and I remember coming back from the baseball game and the line for the blood drive still being a mile long. So I think we all have like those events, but as far as like school, it was fun. We had a good time. The classwork wasn't too challenging. You just did what was next.
Yeah.
And high school was just, you went from football season to wrestling season to baseball season to, work all summer long, and you put in your time and then you do what's next.
Yeah. So, okay, so high school seemed to be pretty easy for you. Played the sports, did the common stuff, right?
Sure.
Getting ready to graduate. What was on your mind? What were you thinking? Where did you go?
I thought I was going to go wrestle. Partly because I thought I was supposed to, and partly because I just love the sport of wrestling. It was a lot of fun. I had, a reasonable amount of success. I'd qualified for state a couple of times. I had a lot of momentum going into my senior year, and I think I was in the semifinals of the regional tournament. Top 4 at regionals, moved on to state at that time, and I went up against a really hard kid. He was younger than me, but he was solid, and I ended up hyperextending my elbow, not really sleeping all night long, and then not wrestling particularly well on Saturday, so I didn't qualify for state my senior year. And I kind of took that as like God's encouragement to say, hey, just go to school and have a good time.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to college and wrestle. I'd looked at a couple of schools, not to say that there was a lot of interest, but could have maybe found an opportunity to wrestle at the Division II or III level. But my heart wasn't in it in the same capacity. Took a little injury and said, hey, God's saying go to college and have fun. Went to Stillwater, America. Wasn't sure what I was supposed to study, but knew I was supposed to go to college. Got a degree in recreation management, throwing frisbees and hacky sacks. Met a pretty lady from Kansas City, America. Talked her into a couple of dates and eventually marriage. So,
wait a second. So you met your wife in college?
Yep, in Stillwater.
Okay.
So I joked that I went to Stillwater. I got a wife and a diploma. So I like them both. Yeah.
Where'd y'all meet at?
Good reason to cheer.
Tell me about that day.
So even though my degree was in recreation management, I was taking like all the kind of higher educational classes as far as like even master and doctorate level classes because I enjoyed the process of learning in that challenge. I had to have a quote unquote like recreational class that, whether it was golf or bowling or whatever. I signed up for rock climbing. My rock climbing class had homework, which means you went to the climbing gym. There was this cute little lady from Kansas City that worked at the climbing gym.
Oh.
I noticed that she worked on Thursday nights. I did all of my homework at the climbing gym on Thursday nights.
You was killing the gym, right?
Yeah, every Thursday night. And then I was like, well, if she has to be here and I need to be here. And
it's a win.
Yes, it was a big win. And she gave me her phone number and it took me a month or two to like, oh, I'm supposed to call her. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, that's how that unfolded.
Oh, okay. Tell me about the first time you called. Do you remember?
Yes, and we both do. I officiated wrestling. That was like my job, if you want to call it a job. It was typically wrestling. You would officiate Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it kind of kept me out of trouble on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So I'm leaving town on a Thursday night on 51, headed westbound, and I look on the right-hand side of this 2-lane highway, and there's this girl who'd given me her phone number. And I'm like, now's when I'm supposed to call her. So I called her on my cell phone, driving past her on Highway 51.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think she was like, what took you so long?
Oh, really?
Well, it took me a little while. So I called her, and then,
the rest
17
is history.
Years and 7 days later, here we are.
The rest is history. Okay, wait, let's not go too deep in that. First, let me go back real quick. Tell me about your dad. You've mentioned him several times. Sounds like he's giving you some really good nuggets to live by. You and I talked about him before we started recording, him being in education, the impact he's made on some folks. Tell me about your dad and what he means to you.
I don't think you can talk about my dad without talking about my mom because they have a beautiful relationship. And they've modeled that for my brother, sister, and I a lifetime. They weren't high school sweethearts, but they went to high school together. And then they also went to Oklahoma State and got married and 3 kids. And 40 plus years later, here we are. But both my parents were in public education for a combined 75 plus years. They taught me my work ethic. They taught us the value of friendship as much as anything. They taught us, the value of a relationship with Christ and showing up to church on not just Sundays, but church in your home and church at your friend's house and church at a Young Life event or FCA or whatever comes between. So I struggle to talk about myself without talking about my parents because I know they created the environment, the opportunity, to be where I am today in all capacities. And my brother and sister would quickly sing the same song in a different tune.
Yeah, yeah. What is it that you remember? I know he gave you the kind of the person in charge, kind of thing, right? What else do you feel like you've taken from your dad? And I want to still kind of come back to your 17 years of marriage. Like the day you asked, what does that look like? What's been great about your marriage? I want to ask all those things, but I want to make sure that I get into this fathering thing if we can. What are some other things that you feel like you've taken from your dad? And now that you're a father of how many? 3?
3.
You're a father of 3, been married to this great woman. So I know that probably treating your wife really good. Now that's an assumption because I'm sure you learned that from your dad.
Sure.
What are some things that you've taken from your dad that you've carried over into being a father?
Things that I've learned from my father that I've carried over into my own role as a father.
Yeah.
Modeling good behaviors. And sometimes those things are, as you say, consistent or, as I might say, intentional. But doing those things and serving others just comes naturally. You mentioned that I have a gift for sending text messages of encouragement. I think God just puts those on my heart. Like I don't have a to-do list of got to call Heady, got to call Trey, got to call Ben. Oh, wait, don't forget. I haven't heard from Trent in a little while. Don't forget about Scott or P. Like, no, those are just people that are on my heart and I care about them. And I think that my father modeled those same behaviors of serving others, whether that was as a high school wrestling coach or whether that was as leading youth groups and ski trips for the FCA I looked at the circle of friends that my parents have around them, and those are people that just show up by caring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like my dad sat me down, slid me a cup of coffee and said, okay, these are the cornerstones to being a good husband. These are the ingredients to being a good father. I just saw him serve our family, and it seemed like the next right thing without having a playbook, even though he'd etched that playbook on my heart, co-authored by my mother the entire time.
That's really good. When you think about you watching your father serve you all and serve his wife,
Sure,
and his community, oftentimes when we see somebody doing something, there has to be something that we like, oh, that was good. So I definitely want to take that on. What are some things that you saw in him in certain, because before we jumped on, you talked about a mutual friend that we have, Pete,
sure.
who was like, tell us about how you hear other people talk about your dad in his serving them. It could be your mom. Like, your mom might be having some sweet things to say about him.
Oh, I'm sure mom's got all sorts of sweet things to say. Like, I tell the story that, like, I would be recognized. Killgore's a relatively unique last name. Even fewer people will spell it with 2 L's in the last name. So I would meet somebody like Mr. Pete, completely unbeknownst to me. He already knew who my father was. So I was serving in the role of community outreach for Sandridge Energy. We were doing some just community volunteerism at what was then FD Moon Elementary School. Have this amazing meeting with this gentleman who I'm meeting for the first time. You know, we shake hands, go our separate ways, and as I'm walking out the door, I hear what I've heard so many times before. Hey, Killgore, are you Coach Killgore's son? And absolutely. Like, I am so honored to be identified by my father's last name, because they don't ask that if it was a bad thing.
Right.
They only ask that if they liked my dad or their experience as a student was a good thing.
No, true.
And they're quick to not just say, oh yeah, I had him in history when I was a 9th grader, or he was my wrestling coach in 1993, or fill in the blank. They say, this is when I first met your father, and this is the impact he has had on my life indefinitely.
Good. Yeah.
So seeing that sense of service as a teacher, as a coach, as a friend, I saw the way that he showed up for people and the way that my mom shows up for her circle of friends. If there is a need or a concern, you know that need or concern is on my mother's heart, and that she joins you in prayer. And knowing that I was going to get to have the opportunity to share time with you today, I was just being intentional about thinking about the role of fatherhood. A good buddy that I used to work with named Corey, he and I got to have lunch together for the first time in a long time yesterday. We spent as much time talking about our kids as we did anything else. Yes, I care about how he's doing in work. Yes, I'm excited that he's, selling his house and moving on to a new opportunity. But the last thing that I said to him was, hey, Corey, I'll be praying for CJ. And he instantaneously responds, and I'll be praying for Cadel. And not just in the general sense, but like, Corey knows why I'm praying for CJ. And I know that Corey is praying for Cadel for his own specific reasons. So I absolutely saw that in my father and the way that he surrounded our family with other encouragers and other mentors, other disciplers. And I think that I am absolutely, taking that from my father's playbook, but it's also part of the community that I'm part of now at church, where we say everyone should be a mentor and everyone should have a mentor, because it goes both directions. And in that generational sense that I used to mentor 16-year-old Chase, who's now 25, and 25-year-old Chase is now mentoring 10-year-old Cadel, you see that investment in community pays infinite dividends just because you show up and care.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. Tell me, man, I love that. I love this idea. One of my favorite books that I think has probably had the greatest impact on me is called Improving Your Serve by Charles Swindoll. And so that's when I read that, I don't know how many years ago that was the book that really spoke to me in the sense of the power of serving other people. There's also a book by John Maxwell called Winning with People that was another highlight of really the importance of just really being there for people and what that looks like. It's cool to hear you talk about your dad in this way. Guy, it seems like I would love to just sit down with pick his brain as well. Carried over into your life. I've seen you be intentional about investing in other people. Your kids are the world to you. I've seen, I mean, in the sense of like the story that I've seen on Instagram,
Sure.
right? That's the case that it seems. Tell me about your kids and what you love about being a father, as much as you want to. You may not want to tell a whole bunch, but just talk about your love of being a father.
I'll tell all the things because they're all good things, right? Yeah. I met a guy a couple weeks ago. And he goes, I don't tell bad stories, and it's not that he doesn't have bad stories to tell. He just doesn't want to perpetuate those. He doesn't want to put those out into the world, and he didn't see the benefit in telling bad stories. The first thing I think I would share about my kids is they are all uniquely and individually their own little selves. Whether you're 8, 10, or 12, in the sequence of girl, boy, girl, they have their own interests. They have their own just zest and zeal for life. The 12-year-old right now is about to be 13 next month, and she just loves making you laugh. She loves being a little zany and whimsical herself. But you can just tell how much joy she experiences by seeing that you're enjoying her personality. And whether that's, making meals and pancakes for everyone on a Saturday, or doing a silly dance when we're at the orthopedics office last week because she broke her toe on the first day of summer, she just enjoys watching you spend that time together. Time is a huge love language for her. Man, my son is so much like me that it hurts, because his empathy is real and his sincerity is real. But I, watched him cut up with all of his baseball buddies yesterday, and you can tell that he enjoys that sense of community from friendships. Yeah, he was dinging the ball, and yeah, he was catching some line drives, but as much as anything, he loved that team dynamic. But I would also love to see the way that he challenges himself. I woke him up for camp this morning, and he had his little nightlight on, and he's sitting there reading. And you wouldn't have found 10-year-old Jefferson sitting in bed reading a big thick book.
It wasn't gonna happen.
Solving Rubik's cubes. That's not what 10-year-old Jefferson did.
Yeah.
But 10-year-old Cadel is completely, a student in all things. But the hard work ethic that I hope I have in myself that I see in him. He came off his first ever wrestling practice back in October, and he was just dripping with sweat. And he looks me dead in the eye. And he goes, "Dad, that was intense." But you could tell that he loved the intensity of it, and he loved the challenge of trying something new. Again, their own little personalities. Sweet little Rennie is 8 years old right now, and she is mischievous, and she is clever, and she knows how to hit all the buttons and take it just to the line of too far.
Yeah.
But she also just loves to play. Her imagination is alive and well. And whether she's drawing or she's playing with whatever little dolls or animals, or you can just see her create between her ears, which is really fun.
Yeah.
But the minute there's a friend outside in the backyard on the trampoline, she wants to play there too. So watching that joy of play is pretty special right now.
That's good. So are any of your kids going to be a better athlete than you were out of the three of them?
I hope so. I don't think I ever defined myself by that role of being an athlete, but I enjoyed the challenge in it. And I can see the older two pushing themselves to reach that next level, whatever the next level is. I see that ethic in them. Whereas the third one, she's better than she realizes she is.
Yeah.
And I think once that for any one of them, it clicks to say I can do more than I think I can, and I'm tougher than I realize I am. The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So
to the new father or dad that may be listening right now. No, let's do this. Tell me, talk to the father who's not a father yet. What was that like for you when you first saw your firstborn? As a dad, as a man, what was the emotions like? What was that like? Because here's the thing. They say that dads don't recognize that they're really fathers until 6 months in.
False.
right? Like
False.
But that is what it said. They say that because the woman's had the baby in her for so many months, like she's carried the baby, and then the father really hadn't had that experience. So they say the mother recognizes a lot quicker than the dad. So you say it's false.
Well, I think there's like I think that's 30 questions that you asked me. So I'll try and chop up 1, 2, or 3 of them.
Yeah.
As far as like it taking 6 months for the father to realize that that's his role, that's his job, I emphatically said false immediately, because if you're a good dad, if you're a good father, you've been there with your wife or expecting mother along the entire journey. No, you haven't physically experienced the intimacy of growing a human in your body.
Yeah.
But if you've been by your wife's side, if you've been prayerful, if you've watched her, like I was reading the books before we had our first kid, and my wife was like, "Stop reading the books. You're knowing too much." And like there were chapters I wanted to skip, but she's like, Hey, you let me do the mom thing. When we have the kid, we'll pick up from there, right?
You were gonna ruin the experience by knowing too much before the baby comes.
I think I was on the cusp of like reading too much. I don't know. It's probably the only time I've ever been accused of reading too much. But in that delivery room, I think you instantaneously feel the love for something that you and your wife and God have created. Mm-hmm. Like, my mom used to joke that, like, well, she didn't joke. She just said, I don't know how you can witness childbirth and not believe in God, because it is indescribable.
Wow.
I did know a guy a while back that, like, we were just, I'll say, gym acquaintances. I worked at the gym. He worked out at the gym. And I knew his wife and his older 2 kids really well, and they had the 3rd kid. And then, like, every day for about 2 weeks, I was like, "Hey, Rob, how's the kid? Hey, Rob, how's the kid?" And then after 2 weeks, he's like, "Jefferson, stop asking me. Like, it's a newborn. It doesn't do anything. But ask me in about 6 months, and that newborn will start taking shape, and I'll be able to say, oh, they responded to this, or they started to crawl, or he threw food in my face, or he, like," so for Rob, he knew what to expect because it was the 3rd child. I think another question that you kind of lobbed in there, on top of all the other really heavy ones, is like, what would you say to a expecting father or not yet father? And it is the greatest job you could ever have, period. It is the greatest responsibility you will ever hold. I think a lot of parents say to their kids, you will never know how much I love you until you are a mom or a dad. And I think that, like, as a kid, you're like, oh, you roll your eyes, you cross your arms, you stomp out of the room. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you which kid stomps out of the room, but I've got one that stomps out of the room. And we love them all so much. But that love that you have as a parent, as a protector, as a provider, as an example,
you can never really.
You run out of words.
Yeah, you can't describe
for that
it.
honor.
Yeah,
for the honor that it is. The same way I'm honored to carry my father's last name, I am honored to give my influence and the responsibility to my kids. Yeah, because I just want them to grow up a little better each day.
So growing up, boy, girl, do you feel a sense of a different type of parenting, girl versus boy?
I mean, I think you can make the argument of boy versus girl, but I think it also goes back to the dynamic of you recognize that they all have their own personalities. So maybe a firmer tone will get the desired result of a lesson learned with one kid, whereas the raised voice or firm tone gets a completely different outcome with a different kid.
Gotcha.
So, and I think, not without like some big societal commentary, things change. Where do you want your 17-year-old daughter leaving for college early? Do you want your 17-year-old son leaving early for college? And I'm not for or against it. I'm not providing that commentary, but it's just interesting to see how you make those decisions differently for each child, or where they may fall among their peers. The benefit of why are we making these decisions, but to know that there is discernment or thought behind the decisions that you're making for your kid to go to camp, or your kid to try out for sports for the first time, or, try an instrument or chess club. Like, when's the right time, and how do you meet them there appropriately?
Yeah. So I'm not trying to start nothing here. Okay. I'm just boy, girl dating.
Yes.
Like, do you approach both the same when it comes to dating? Feel free to answer.
No, yes.
Oh. No, yes.
Or yes, no. Anyhow,
Okay.
I think so you want dad advice.
Yeah.
One of the firmest lessons, and I think he probably only said it once, that my dad shared with me as it related to the value of dating. And we didn't have many conversations about dating, but he said, I want you to respect every woman that you ever date with the same respect and reverence that you do your mother or sister.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to break down what that was.
Gotcha.
Because everyone that I was going to date was going to be somebody's daughter or sister. So it put those guardrails of respect in a different capacity. And I say this with the utmost respect. I couldn't imagine a better husband for my sister, because her husband, Adam, they're 16, nearly 17 years of marriage as well. He treats my sister with such respect and reverence that's how I'd want her to be respected in any relationship. So yeah, I'll definitely regurgitate those same words over my son, but I would conversely say to my daughters, everyone that ever dates you should treat you with the same respect that your brother or father treats you with, which is also puts the onus on me to say, I need to treat their mother, my beautiful bride, with the same respect and honor and holy sacramony of marriage that I would want my daughters to be honored with. Gotcha.
What about, like, in a sense, and then I hear you on that. I think there's definitely that's all great. The actual dating part, as far as somebody knocking on the door, well, your son's going to go knock on somebody's door.
He is going to knock on the door.
He's going to go knock on
He's not honking the horn.
He's not honking the horn.
He's not texting
He's gonna
her,
go knock
I'm
on
here.
the door. Yeah, he's going to go knock on the door.
He's going to shake the hand and make the eye contact with the dad.
Somebody's going to come knock on your door.
Yep.
Are those the same age?
I hope so.
When those things can happen for the girl versus the boy.
Yes, I hope so. Disclaimer, Miss Kristin Joy Killgore and I have not yet had those conversations or set the boundaries for what that needs to look like. Because marriage, my friend, is a partnership. So I'm not making any executive decisions today on the Heady Coleman Podcast. Yeah, and I think the one thing that, like...
Now, we're just talking hypothetically. Like, we're just talking for fun here.
No, it's fun. And it's fun because we laugh about it because there's some truth there that makes me wiggle a little bit. And it's proximate, right? Like I just said, she's 12, she'll be 13 next year. I don't know what dating could, should look like for her. But what I do know is that it is worlds different from when I called some girl's house when I was in the 8th or 9th grade, and her dad answered the phone, and I had to politely ask Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so if I could speak to their daughter. Because now it's all text, and it's a different world that I don't understand.
So true.
Scary.
So true. I never thought about it like that. I never thought about it like, you don't have to call now. You just text somebody. So then you really don't go, because you don't text the parents first. Like, hey, you mind if I text your daughter?
No, but I think, again, it's setting appropriate boundaries. So the same way I say, hey, look at your significant other as fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Hey, don't let that guy in your DMs. Don't add him to your snaps. I don't even know what snaps are. But don't add him in your snaps until you're ready to have a conversation with him. And again, a friend I was talking to yesterday, he goes to school, I don't know, probably 30 minutes away from where his girlfriend goes to school. But because of social media, they started dating a year and a half ago. And good on them. Like, I'm sure they have a really healthy relationship. I'm sure their parents have set those boundaries because I know and I trust those parents to know that they've been intentional with those relationships. But in the game of you don't know what you don't know, I want to know more, and I want to set appropriate boundaries because, again, as a father, I want to protect.
Yeah.
So if I don't set up the boundaries of what a healthy relationship looks like, I haven't provided the framework for my kids to have healthy relationships, be that with a significant other or just their circle of friends.
Yeah.
Because you can get bullied on Fortnite. I don't get bullied on Fortnite because I don't play Fortnite, but it's my understanding. It's my
You can
understanding.
be bullied on Fortnite. So I understand. Like, you need to bring your wife into this. You're not giving out any. This is the sure thing, right?
Yeah.
But just talking real quick, and we're gonna move on to the next thing. Like, do you feel comfortable saying that you would probably want your daughter to date later than your son? Like,
I get that adage. And if I was like, okay, I'm going to lock my daughters up in the basement until they're 32. And then when they're 32, they can go down to the square dance or a hootenanny and meet somebody at the social mixer. Yeah, I get the notion that you would want your daughters to abstain from dating longer. But at I said 32, not 40.
No, mine's 40.
Oh, 40. Okay. That's for you and your daughter to figure out. That's not my concern. I'm much more liberal. 32. But I don't think that the double standard for relationships I don't think it honors either the son or the daughters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's just that's a common thing that people like to talk about. But the truth be told, sometimes I think sometimes I won't say my kids particularly, but sometimes the girls are a little bit more mature than the boys and probably should be holding off a little bit longer, even though I think like the way that it is brought to our attention as far as how we do those things based on the world oftentimes is the boys can date earlier than the girls.
And not to be like loose with the term maturity, but I think you're right. I think that girls in darn near every sense of the word do become more mature more quickly. But if I understand correctly, and I'm no scientist, I told you my job is in hacky sacks and frisbees and fill in the blank, but I don't think the male mind fully develops until you're 25.
Yeah.
But you've got, 12 and 15 and 18-year-old boys thinking that they're men. And it's whether you're the man in that relationship or the young lady, we got a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, for sure.
We got a lot of growing up to do.
For sure. What's the one thing, like, before your kids do leave the house that you want to, like, definitely make sure that they understand as a father?
As a father.
What is that thing for you?
The importance of communication, the value of respect. Heady, you talk a lot about, like, and these are my understandings of what you share. So feel free to say, no, you got it all wrong, my guy.
Yeah.
But it's like, I didn't realize all the little things that I just do almost without thought that are either trying to serve our kids or serve my wife, their mother, that hopefully make a lasting impact. Whether that's making her coffee every morning or making her a shake for breakfast every day or making sure that the bed is made before we leave the house. Because if I can start by winning the morning, I can win the day because I've set those things up.
Yeah.
I may be really good at making the bed first thing in the morning, but I'm terrible about doing the dishes at night.
Yeah.
Maybe, but hopefully my kids are watching these behaviors and realizing that I'm trying to serve them by making their lunch the night before or lay their backpacks out. Or, this isn't a big gender norm conversation, but like, I'm happy to clean the floor and do the dishes and make the bed and fold the laundry. If that's one less thing that my wife has to do, and then in turn, she and I both get to spend more time with our kids in the family, doesn't matter that, Wally, Cleaver, and the Brady bunch did their way. We're going to do it the way that makes sense for our family because it honors our family. And if that means, you get the ice skating bag out the night before and you dry off the skates for your daughter so she can get to school on time, then that's just the little way that you serve others without even thinking about it. The same way that sending a text message of encouragement or stopping by your buddy Ben's bookstore honors that relationship because you care about them.
Yeah.
And you vote not just with your feet, but with your time.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Oh, it all is.
Easier said than done. And so I jotted down the note of the book that you said is one of your two favorites.
Yeah.
And I don't consume information by written word as often as I once did, because the convenience of having a computer in your pocket means I can listen to podcasts and books all day long. It's
completely different.
I think it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
I think there's value in it, but hopefully like my kids see and hear the content that I'm consuming. To the point yesterday, my son goes, "Hey Dad, next song." And I'm like, "I like this song." And he goes, "Did you not hear the word he just said?" And I'm like, "I didn't hear the word he just said." He goes, "Well, I counted this one, and this one twice." I was like, "You're right. Next song."
Yeah, next song.
Next song. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, my son can name all 9 members of the Wu-Tang Clan, and it's hilarious as a party trick. But it's also like, we're having fun with it.
Yeah.
But that, just because you can name all 9 members doesn't mean we get to listen to Cream on our way to school tomorrow.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's good. That is so good. Man, I think, talking about being a dad, a father, you cannot not talk about your wife, right? And
if you're doing it right. In my opinion.
In your opinion, then this is about you. Like, you're on the podcast. Nobody else. It's just the two of us. So your opinion matters. But, one of the things that I always say to people is like, man, good fathering is treating my wife. And I think you alluded to this earlier as far as how your dad does with your mom. Laughing with her in the kitchen, dancing with her in the kitchen.
We need to dance more.
Yeah,
regardless of how good of a dancer we should all dance more.
Dance more. Just let loose.
Move your body.
Yeah, move your body. Let loose. But talk to me about just what are some of those right things that you do consistently in serving your wife or making sure you have a healthy marriage.
I mean, so I kind of like. I didn't even allude. I just said, make her coffee every morning, make her breakfast every morning.
Yeah.
She didn't ask me to do those things, but I saw an opportunity to serve her. Was it last night? Within the last 2 days, I had a kid ask me, "Do you text mom every hour?" And I'm like, sometimes a lot more and sometimes a lot less. But there are times in the year, maybe an anniversary, maybe a kid's birthday, where I'll literally set a reminder that says, it's just an alarm. It goes off every hour. And every hour I'll send a photo from when the kid was 1 or the kid was 2 or the kid was 3, or when we had our first anniversary or our 10th anniversary or our 15th anniversary. And I not only want her to know, I think it's a healthy practice for myself to know that I am thinking about her and our relationship all day, every day. I'll say like the same things. Like, have I mentioned today how much I love you? Well, it's a joke, and yes, also like a reminder, have I told you exactly how much you mean to me today?
Yeah.
There's silly hashtags like most dope wife or most dope family, or I'm not going to say my wife's love language is cookie cake, but we like cookie cake.
Yeah.
And I don't even like icing, but my wife and my kids love cookie cake and icing. So like to the part where I'll walk into the Target store and the lady at the cookie counter laughs at me because she knows I'm going to say something ridiculous on this cookie cake.
Yeah.
And I love that they will write anything I want them to on a cookie cake because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's those little things. And, you asked about like when we first started dating, she is studious and she is a hard worker. And as a structural engineering student, she often found herself working very late at the architecture studio. And those, there's for safety and security, those doors are locked. So I'd leave a note on her car. And here we are 17 plus years later, and I'm still leaving notes on her car, on her mirror, next to her coffee, just those little things that remind her and my kids now how much they mean to me. And it's like, I left one of those notes. I owed my son an apology. We were running late for soccer practice, and it was kind of my fault, and it was kind of GPS's fault. But at the end of the day, I was frustrated with myself that we drove around needlessly for 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm a guy who loves to be on time. I had a professor in college that said, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
And now we weren't just 5 minutes early. We were really 10 minutes late. But my behavior was not what I wanted to see in myself. So I left my son a note 48 hours later with an apology about who I want to be for him as a father. And then he drew a really funny photo or picture and he put it under my pillow and he left me a note. So it's, whether it's the cookie cake, or in our house, we'll call them just because gifts.
Yeah.
And they're not big gifts. It could be a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
It could be a kid's book. It could be a little earring or a candle or anything that just says, hey, I was thinking about you. You matter to me. Here's a just because gift.
That's legit.
Nobody, it just seems right.
Yeah.
To tell people how much they mean to you, right?
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure in that 51 minutes, 52 minutes, 53 minutes, however long that was, you definitely can pull away something that you've learned, and I'm definitely inspired. I love the importance of just letting people know that they matter, and that's starting in your home, and that probably carries over out of your home. I love the example Jefferson talked about of how he loves his wife and treats her in front of his kids. I think that's a big part of fathering and being a dad if you're married in your relationship to the mother of your children. I think that's important. But if you're not married, still important to be treating them good. And so, Jefferson, any last thoughts before we shut off the stop button on this thing?
No, I mean, I think we've talked about it both directly and indirectly. Like, it's just how you show up and serve others in all those little ways, and all the people who have had an impact or an impression on your life, whether that was a boss or a neighbor or a friend. Just because they're no longer your boss, just because they're no longer your professor or your neighbor, doesn't mean that they stop having an impact in your life, or that you have to stop having an impact in their life. So yeah, you want to be your best and your brightest as a, good dude and great dad for your immediate family. And that's where your highest priority should be.
Yeah.
But the same way that you wave at the person at the park, or you extend that kindness in each and every capacity, just do the right thing and love others well.
Yeah, for sure.
It should be simpler to be kinder all the time.
Yeah. So good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hitting that play button for another episode of the Heady Coleman Podcast. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, go win.
Go win.